Hello and welcome to Brainwaves episode 150, bringing you the best in tabletop gaming news. My name is Ian McAllister.
And my name is Jamie Adams, and this is the headline for the week of Monday the 16th of September, 2024. Influencer Simon Lavender accused of dishonest behaviour. All this and more on this episode of Brainwaves.
Now, we've only got one headline this week, as this story has grown arms and legs over the last few weeks. Please bear with us as we take you through it. Many thanks to Oliver, who can't be with us today, for doing the legwork on writing this one up, and our Discord community for helping us out with further information. In a Board Game Geek thread started on the 18th of August 2024, game designer Gerardo Priori reported his dealings with Simon Lavender. Simon is the owner of YouTube channel Amass Games, a UK-based channel that does unboxings, reviews, and playthroughs. After initially keeping Lavender's identity a secret, Priori updated the Board Game Geek thread on the 28th of August and revealed who they were dealing with. According to Priori, on the 21st of May this year, they contacted Lavender to discuss coverage of Priori's first game, The Strange Forgeries of Mr. S.C. Rheber. Lavender replies by sending Priori their media kit, which Priori quotes in the Board Game Geek thread as follows.
With a review copy, I tend to record a preview, how to set, play and review, solo playthrough, if available, promos/expansions, playthrough with promo/expansions, if possible, multiplayer playthrough, if possible. Numerous awards are given to companies at Christmas. Keen to hear your thoughts. I work with Belgian, Russian and Chinese online board game retailers, and I'm keen to see if you're interested. I like sales. I used to work in sales #1 at 2 companies, including Redacted. Plus, I consult and tutor to Redacted. I would be interested in collaborating with you. Recent publishers have already stated they are sending me all their future releases. For example, Redacted. Experience and find out. To ensure this hasn't gone to spam, please let me know. There are packages £249 to £999 plus to help you stand out, as well-recommended videos, etc. A/B test 1,000 times increase in viewership.
I think it's just us worth mentioning there that the emails that Priori shares in the Board Game Geek thread, he has typed out and are copies of Simon's emails. He hasn't screenshotted them. So I believe the redaction is Gerardo's own work to protect Simon's identity a bit at the time. Lavender also went on to explain that they worked as a demonstrator and could help Priori on their stand at Spiel Essen this year. Lavender also requests a copy of the game to establish whether it suits their YouTube channel. Priori is interested in Lavender's services and agrees to provide a prototype of their game, which is picked up by a friend of Lavender's from Priori's stand at UK Games Expo in June this year. After UK Games Expo, which took place from the 31st of May through the 2nd of June, Priori contacts Lavender on the 13th of June to follow up on the prototype and the potential work. Lavender responds with a new media kit, different from the one they sent originally, and explains that they are very busy at the moment. It becomes clear that the preview and other services mentioned in the original media kit are actually paid for. Lavender says,
I have 225 plus games to review. Here are the packages I mentioned. If you're committing via a package, I know I can demo for you.
He explains the reason for this.
I work with a first to receive, first to promote/demo, which is the fairest way. To please the most publishers sooner, I now usually do one of theirs, then one of the next publisher, etc. However, to be able to afford Amass Games, I prioritise based on the packages in the prior email. After that, I ask the fans what games they'd like me to review, etc. Aware we're agreeing that I'll aid you in person too, and that can be added to packages, which puts you with content produced this month. I can send the PayPal address or my IBAN if preferred.
After some further discussion, Priori decides that they do not want Lavender to cover the Strange Forgeries after all, and also won't ask Lavender to help at their Spiel Essen stand. On the 26th of June, Priori asks Lavender to return the prototype of the game and offers to cover shipping costs. After being initially ignored, Priori eventually receives a reply from Lavender in which they explain,
I will need to know the game to demo it, and I will still be producing content for it. Publishers have always let me keep their games, unless arranged prior as a way to pay for my time and the promotion received. Hence, I have received numerous games worth £250 plus free, although I feel obliged to provide content, and now they provide me with all their games every year. Also, you can check, many influencers sell their games to be able to afford the rent, etc., especially if they're not receiving extra money.
Priori makes it clear that they do not want to do business with Lavender and requests the return of the prototype by saying,
Happy to share laughs at the gaming table in Essen, but it's better we avoid further business corporations. We are clearly wasting time and energy. Please let me know which day you can drop off a parcel with my pre-production copy next week at the nearest post office. As a sign of peace, I will organise the shipment personally and clear the shipping costs directly.
Communication between the two continues throughout July, during which Lavender's tone changes after perceiving Priory as threatening to contact Amass Games' clients. On the 9th of August, Priory receives an email from someone signing as Daniela, who claims to represent a firm working on behalf of an anonymous client. Daniela explains that the prototype of the Strange Forgeries is Lavender's property, and that Priory's emails asking Lavender to return it are to be considered extortion, as they are a request to return someone else's property in return for silence. Daniela says that this is illegal under the Malicious Communications Act of 1988. Daniela continues by offering Priory the return of the prototype, provided certain costs and fees are paid. Priory quotes Daniela as saying,
"You mentioned an invoice for €60, a discount for the game. The game is available at this discount for this price on top of the 3 options above. Another company has sent a €120 deposit to secure the demonstrating of their games and to promote to other businesses."
We know that quote sounds a little strange, but it is the quote that Priory put in the original thread, so we're just reading it verbatim. When asked by Priory, Lavender will neither confirm nor deny whether Daniela is representing them. At this point, Priory ceases communication with Daniela. I'm going to pass over to Jamie for the rest of this story.
Since then, the thread on BoardGameGeek received a large number of replies, including from people who themselves have had dealings with Lavender. These include stories of him being banned from local groups, treating other small publishers badly, review bombing folk who wouldn't work for him, and pestering gaming celebrities. Lavender replied to the thread on the 28th of August, which is when Priory revealed their identity. Lavender writes,
"Hi there. I appreciate all the thumbs and empathy/sympathy for the OP. However, I would never take someone's word without hearing from the other party. Would you? I've had friends in the business contact me about this and other matters that they are being blackmailed to either use X, Y, Z, or me. I've had a company turn me down for downwing, yet pay me off and are taking me out for a meal. If you wish to only hear one side, that's media for you, but I have information that hasn't been edited. I'm very upset by this open attack, haven't slept in 2 days, and I've been harassed repeatedly by this person. I blocked them some time ago via Gmail, Instagram, YouTube, along with their many new email accounts and vile messages on YouTube, which have been reported for harassment. How can they dedicate so much time to hating me? Alas, negativity wins. I've had a terrible week and I love board games. Alas, bad apples exist."
He goes on to say that it wasn't clear that the game given was a prototype, and that Gerardo had twice offered to pay. He ends by saying,
"Many are claiming inaccuracies about me too. They are not presenting the full facts and I can provide those."
The issue seems to have been finally resolved on the 5th of September, when BoardGameGeek user Alexander Urbanik introduced themselves as a mediator between Priory and Lavender.
This is directly from the BoardGameGeek thread. "May I introduce myself to the readers and participants of this thread? I am the mediator between both conflicting parties concerning the game copy. I was directed to this thread and the general issues discussed herein by Paul Grogan. I owe my thanks for this kindness, dedication to protecting the board gaming community, and for the time he has taken out of his schedule for me. I have reached out to Gerardo and thanked him for this thread, as it provides a civil and open forum to discuss problematic matters and to work towards a solution. He has asked me to be the mediator between him and Simon. Simon has accepted my service too. Since the 4th of September, 8 PM, the game copy is now in the hands of my envoy, Louisa. Gerardo has officially stated to me that he regards this game as returned. We'll make sure that the game reaches him swiftly. Both Simon Lavender and Gerardo Priory have shown me goodwill in resolving the situation to ease the further discussions of other issues highlighted here and in other places. I owe a great debt of gratitude to Lisa and her husband. Without their active and kind help, such a quick solution would not have been possible. They are prime examples of the qualities that define our community on BGG. I'm posting pictures of the returned game with Gerardo's permission as further evidence, and there are 2 pictures of the game below that post."
Urbanik confirmed that the prototype was returned to Priory, who confirmed the resolution of the issue in their own reply on the thread on the same day. After it looks like the issue had been resolved, Lavender posted their response to the same BoardGameGeek thread on Friday, the 6th of September. We're not going to read it out here, as it is very long, but we will link to it in the show notes. In that reply, Simon shares an email exchange with Gerardo, with some words blacked out, where it seems to make out that the game is not a prototype. Says he was aware at the end of August that the designer wanted the game back and that the matter is now resolved. Clarifies that he doesn't have over 200 reviews copies to film, but over 200 games that are unplayed. says,
I apologize if it makes you feel better that I did something that you believe is wrong when unaware.
He then goes on to imply that he considers the incident defamation and harassment under the Malicious Communications Act and that he has visited a police station over it. That he has been victim of a cyber attack and his car has been damaged. Asks Priori to add his original reply as a link in the top post of the thread that he claims Priori said he would do. He also asked Priori to remove his name from the post. We remind listeners that originally Gerardo did not name the influencer they were talking about. Priori replies around half an hour after Lavender's post. He starts off by apologising about not adding Simon's original reply and acknowledges that the situation has now reached a satisfactory resolution. However, he goes on to say this about the game being a prototype.
The problem is not about you being aware of the semantic nature of the object you withheld for months, either prototype or pre-production, which is the word you blacked out. It's not even about the fact that you were aware of its value, but rather that you were aware that it was my property, that I want it back. The fact that it wouldn't have cost you nothing to return and still you haven't paid a penny since Louisa is taking care of the packing and I will cover the cost, simply confirmed a serious negligence through those months. Of a certain gravity is the fact that you purposely threatened me in the attempt to stop my requests.
We did talk directly to Gerardo to get his take on the situation. Here's Ian's interview.
Delighted to say that I'm joined by Gerardo Priori, the person who's been at the sort of centre of this controversy with Simon Lavender. How are you doing, Gerardo?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. And thanks for the invite.
Not at all. Thanks very much for joining us. So what I'd like to start off with, first of all, is would you have wanted this game back whether Simon had produced content or not? Or were you happy to let him have it as long as content got produced?
Well, so this very much depends in which state of the whole adventure you would ask me, because on its premises, since it was a prototype, I imagine it happened basically with every people that I collaborate, that it was implicit that it would be passed over. The problem when you start to then notice a certain negligence for even just producing content in general, and then you start to, lower your expectations. So there was a moment in which I said, okay, listen, you know what? It's fine if you keep it. Just let me know if you can provide. If you keep it, just provide the content. And if you are not willing to provide the content, just send it back. So,
did you make that clear from the outset that was the setup you wanted? Like you wanted it back if nothing was going to happen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you had issues with any other folk who have had a copy of your game, not like sending it back or not sending it back, or that kind of thing? Have you had any issues with any other content creators, basically, over this game?
Yeah, it did happen. I think we have to separate something that is clearly made in bad faith, okay, with some maybe a smaller realities that maybe due to their disorganization or other at some point.
Not malice, but just mistakes made, and
mistakes made. So yes, definitely happened. It definitely happened that. Nevertheless, I can count for another case in which I wouldn't call it just mistakes, but just very dishonest business practice, where so it happened other times. Okay. So for malice other times, but most often is for just sloppiness or just inexperience of the party involved.
Sure. So what made you eventually take to BGG, and why did you initially keep Simon's identity out of the post?
Well, so I don't have any pleasure in damaging the reputation of anyone. So when you then approach a problem as such, so let's put it in that way. It was already several months that I was chasing Simon for the return of my property.
Sure.
And it passed through several stages in which I talked to my lawyer for a recommendation. They simply told him that the situation is just too small, too trivial to actually invest anything. So the best I could do is fundamentally at a certain point, if it was obvious that there is clear negligence in returning my possession, release an invoice. Okay, so at least to confirm that if eventually they want to keep it, at least they want to repay the debt. In this case, I made a symbolic invoices, and after one month, it was not repaid, and I was also ignored. I received this threatening email from Daniela. So then I was wondering, okay, so the next step is basically debt collector agency. So someone that would eventually recover the debt. And there as well, the costs are, the costs are higher than I would still accumulate loss. Also, probably not even solve the situation.
Yeah.
So then I was thinking, okay, maybe there are other options. People that are based in the UK, they can suggest me something. And then I said, okay, go to Board Game Geek, which is an English-speaking network. Let's try it out. Normally, when I post in Board Game Geek, there are very, 4 or 5 answers. All very useful, all very, very clever. So this was already sufficient for me. So I tried it out, and that was the objective. So get some ideas on how to eventually proceed for recovering either a debt or a property in a country that is not my own. And in this situation, I don't think it's legitimate to reveal someone's identity and ruin his reputation. Like, you just want to recover the property and deal it privately. You just want suggestion on how to operationalize it. And then actually the topic got more and more interest from the community, and many of them raised actually a point that is true. That's saying that actually keeping the identity of certain wrongdoers hidden is just counterproductive. And honestly, they got a point, because the reason why I incurred in so many misadventure during my go-to-market strategies, because if I Google anything like that on the internet, there is only confirmation. It's only confirmation bias. I spent thousands of euro for email marketing, to then discover later in an interview with publisher that they also spend thousands of euros for no returns. No, but then if you just read on the internet, this is what you do. No, it's a confirmation bias.
Yeah, it's hard to figure out what's real and what's not on that. Yeah,
exactly. So on the general level of what are good practice, people that write in the internet about, okay, this is how you launch a game. They don't even probably know or ever even launch a sufficient amount on the indie publisher reality to even say so. And the same is valid for wrongdoers and how to deal with these things. So if I type Simon Lavender, in my case, there was just good things coming out. Of course, the content that he produces is amatorial, but as for many others, okay, my game is amatorial. I illustrated myself. I made all the engineering myself. Okay, so it's a hobby of amateurs. So apart from that, so they nailed the point. If everyone would do that like me, then the next one would fall into that, and so then I decided to talk a bit more into detail on that.
Yeah. So yeah, you revealed Simon's name. The chat went on, and Simon eventually responded to the post. At one point in the post, he says he felt harassed by you. Did you feel like your behavior was harassing?
No, they were some very polite email to ask him to send back the prototype. Of course, the notes of politeness don't mean that they were not concerned. So I was very serious about the fact that he was not doing something right, but never asked him. I think in total of 6 mail in 2 months. So yeah. So if that's harassment, 6 polite email in 2 months, then yes.
You mentioned Daniela earlier. Now, Daniela is a personality that came out during the conversation that you had with the users on BGG, and that was someone who contacted you via email representing their client, in air quotes, and you sort of questioned them a bit about what on earth was going on, who they were and what they were doing. And did they just eventually go away, that person?
So I received this email from this individual. The problem was that it was a Gmail email, so you never know if It just it's never good to trust a Gmail sender that cold email you. But it was obvious that he knew Simon, he knew the situation. So then I simply told her if she can present herself and the firm that she represents. Because if it was about some legal disputes, I would have liked to eventually talk with my lawyer and then eventually give her.
Did she name the company that she represented?
No, she said that she works for the name of a company, but very generic. I think I don't remember it, but nothing was coming out in Google, and that she wants to stay anonymous. So she didn't give. Normally, when you do this kind of stuff, you need to give a very detailed piece of information, so my lawyer can send like a notified letter, as for instance, and then they. So from a Gmail account, someone that impersonate like an institution that doesn't want to give name and surname. So then I basically forwarded so I asked her kindly, nice to meet you. Can you just explain me that? She answered back with the fact that she wants to stay anonymous and that I should not harass anymore Simon Lavender because basically the property of this game was his, and me claiming to have it back is basically a threat. Okay, because I was basically saying, well, give me back that game, otherwise I have to go to a debt collector agency, So then, since in his mind or in this narrative, the property was his, I was basically threatening him, and this is illegal, and I should not do it, and I should stop the conversation. So then on this answer, I forwarded this email to Simon to ask him, okay, listen, this person is saying that he's representing you. Can you please confirm that this is the case? Because, maybe not. Maybe he doesn't want to be represented. And nothing. And from then, I didn't have any answer from both of them.
Right. So that was where Simon cut off communication with you when you were asked about the identity of this emailer.
Well, actually, Simon closed communication immediately after I told him to send me back my property. That was 2 months before this exchange with Daniela. And
you hadn't had anything since that, and you didn't get anything in reply to the Daniela question as well. Okay. So Simon has now put out a video for your game. Went out on his channel about 7 days ago. Now I think we'll put a link to that in our show notes. What do you think of that video?
Well,
it's entitled "How to Play and Review of your game."
There are many ways that we can start with that. So let's start with one thing. I have a lot of sense of humor, and that is a very funny video because it's so obviously not holding on its premises that it's funny. It's not even bad publicity because it's clearly done by someone that doesn't have any seconds of experience with my game. So it's not bad publicity. It's sort of funny in a grotesque way. So that's how I feel it. Not that I wanted it to exist, but it's just there. I don't think I want to press for him to remove it. There is no reason for that. There is no bad publicity on this. Just for himself. So I don't even know why he put it up. So.
What would you say to other publishers that are thinking about working with Amass Games in the future?
I would discourage them to work with him, and it seems to me from what based on his narratives, based on how many products he receives from publisher, and the speed of its content, that it doesn't seem to be a reliable company. Therefore, if they would leave and trust some property to him, it will stay there for, I think the average I publish is list. So the average waiting time is 500 days, okay? If then we respect what he says, that first come, first served, would be 2,000 days. So I wouldn't do it. And then seeing the content that he produced for me within a reasonable time, because we're talking about a content produced 3 months after I land the property and all the difficulties caused, that even if it would be faster, I don't think it's worth the effort. Yes, even if the product is not even worth the money to ship it back. So no, it doesn't seem to be a reliable company.
Okay. Thanks very much for your time, Gerardo. Really appreciate you coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you for that, Ian. I'm going to pass back to Ian for some more of the story.
Now, we have reached out to the community to hear about other people's experiences with Simon Lavender. We have permission from those who have contacted us to share their experiences and their details. First up is my interview with Rhys Saunders, who's the social media manager for Stop, Drop and Roll. I'm joined by Rhys Saunders, who's the social media manager for Stop, Drop and Roll, a publisher of games such as Earthrising and Pugs and Mugs. As I understand it, Rhys, you've had some dealings with Simon Lavender in the past, is that right?
Yes, we have, going back to 2020 when we first started making games.
Cool. Can you tell us a little bit about that sort of initial contact and what happened?
So I can't remember if we reached out to Simon or if it was the other way around, but we were gearing up to relaunch Pugs and Mugs after our first initial Kickstarter failed. And we had, it must have been an hour, maybe an hour and a half conversation with him about his services, what he could offer us as a small company to help get our game in front of a bigger audience, to do like reviews and all sorts of things. It was a lot. It was a very long conversation and a lot was said, but that was where it started.
Okay, and what sort of services was he offering to you?
From my understanding of it, it was mainly YouTube videos. He did make it seem like he'd be able to get us in touch with other people, and like he had friends in high places within the community. Considering we were, just starting out, it was nice to meet someone who might be able to get us into the right circles there. But I'll be honest, a lot of his services were quite difficult to understand.
Okay.
There was just a lot of terminology that I wasn't particularly familiar with. And he kept going over his stats and how many games he'd played, how many games he'd reviewed, who he's had copies from, this sort of thing, like who his connections were. So after that phone call, well, I think it was a Teams call or something, I immediately checked out his YouTube page to see whether or not what he was saying was true, because that's just the sort of person I am. I always check. And I very quickly found that it wasn't.
Yeah, how much sort of under, can you give us a sort of idea of percentages or like sort of like the number he was claiming to the number you found? Are you going to got any memory of that?
From what I can remember, and again, this is back to 2020 and I don't have the notes from it, but from what I can remember, he was talking about getting thousands of views. And I think his videos at the time were maybe getting 30 to 40 that I could see. And from the email we got back from him, I think what he was actually doing was pulling views from all of the videos he'd put out over like a month or something into one pool, if that makes sense. So
sure, so you're sort of adding all his videos for a month as the views that he got for each video, yes. Basically.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was one of those things where I quickly realized he was making the data look much, much better than it actually was.
So you decided to not go with Simon Lavender in the end. What happened when you made that decision?
Nothing happened, to be honest. I don't think we contacted him again after saying no. I asked him to email us a price list, because that was the other thing is, in the call, he wouldn't give us a clear idea of what pricing would be. And small company run just by us, we're broke. So it's like, we're very careful with the money we spend. So we waited until we got that price list, immediately realised that not only was it not worth the money, but also that we couldn't afford him, and didn't get in contact with him again until 2023, when he left a negative review on Board Game Geek.
Yeah, so what was that review and what made you sort of like realise it was there and then what happened next?
So I check Board Game Geek every now and again. Being the company we are, Earth Rising is a game about climate change, so that is a political subject. We are openly, anti-fascist, anti-phobia, everything. We are very open about that as a company, so we do quite often get reviews from people who don't like our political standpoints. So I do check in because it is possible to reach out to Board Game Geek and say, these reviews are coming from this. Can you remove them? And that's when I spotted Simon Lavender's review. And I personally don't care if people don't enjoy our games, because that's going to happen, right? They're going to make a game that everyone loves, and I don't mind. But the problem with Simon Lavender's review is that he said he had issues with the word of the publisher. And considering we hadn't spoken to him for 3 years, I was wondering what word he might have had issues with. So I reached out to him in an email.
Okay.
I just said, thank you for taking the time to review the game. We pride ourselves on being very open people and being very honest with everything we do. So the fact that you have issues with our word is a bit worrying to me. Could you please clarify what exactly you have issues with? And his reply immediately started with a lie.
Okay. What was that lie?
He said that he had spoken to Laurie at UKGE, which he can't have done because Laurie did not attend UKGE in 2022, I believe it was. It was just myself and Rob that year. Laurie had to stay home and dog sit because our dog sitter had fallen, unfortunately, very ill. And he also said that Laurie had promised to work on all future campaigns with Simon and then had basically not gotten in contact with him. Simon had seemingly forgotten that I was on that call, which I'm not surprised at. I didn't say much, to be fair. I introduced myself in the beginning and then I just listened and took notes. But at the same time, to blatantly lie, I wish I could say I was surprised.
Yeah, you sort of got a feeling of uncomfortableness from the initial contact straight away, basically. And
Yeah, absolutely. When you're speaking to someone and they're hard selling services in a way where they're shielding those services from your understanding to begin with by phrasing them in such a way that you don't really know what you're getting, and also not telling you what the prices are going to be until you essentially say, I'm not taking this any further until you send them to me in writing. It's like everything this guy does is dodgy, in my opinion. And it's just the lying for me. If there's one thing I can't stand, it's lying, especially when you're working with small indie publishers.
have you had any contact from Simon Lavender since that email exchange over the review?
So I replied to his reply where he mentioned, about Laurie making these promises he never made. And I did not get any further response from Simon.
Yeah, and you haven't seen him review bomb any of your other games. Well, let's not call it review bomb, but review any of your other games.
So I actually have. He left it a whole year. So Board Game Geek removed his review because I emailed them as well, because the other problem is Simon was linking his YouTube account in the reviews, but not with videos of the games he was reviewing.
Yeah, I've had a look at Board Game Geek at some of his reviews on Board Game Geek itself, and he does that a lot.
Yeah, and they didn't like that. So from my understanding of it, they asked him to remove those links from all of his reviews, which I can imagine took a very long time. But it was this year, I believe August, he reviewed Pugs and Mugs again after playing it on Board Game Geek, and he reviewed it one mark higher this year. So clearly the game has aged well.
Pugs and Mugs get better over time, like wine.
Yeah, absolutely. They do. They just fermenting in their mugs.
Yeah.
He still thinks it's a terrible game, which is fine. That's fine. But the thing I'm a little bit concerned about is the fact that very soon after Simon left his review, we've had 3 accounts which have clearly all been made by the same person, because it's all got like animal, verb, and number as the usernames.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 3 of them because Rhea and I have had a conversation before this chat, and you sent me some information about the dealings you had with Simon. Yeah, they're like Abject Cheetah 5, Panicky Paella 7, and Line Poultry 0.
Yeah. And I cannot say for sure that this is done by Simon, but I know he's very upset with us, and I wouldn't be surprised because he does come across to me like the kind of person that would do that would make fake accounts to review people. But these accounts also only have 1-star reviews for our games. So they were made.
That's all they have.
That's the only thing they have is a 1-star for Pugs and Mugs and Earthrising. And they're all in the same tournaments or something. So it's like they've clearly been made by the same person for one purpose, and that purpose is to leave bad reviews on our games.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to say to small publishers out there that might be considering dealing with Simon Lavender?
I would say trust your gut. If you are in a call with anyone, to be honest, Simon, any reviewer, and something about it makes you uncertain, listen to that, because that's important. And also talk to fellow indie publishers. You know, we're all really open and honest people. We do want to share what we have. I mean, I know a lot of UK indie publishers have, I think we've got a spreadsheet somewhere of reviewers that we've used and trust. And that's not something that we aren't afraid, that we're afraid to share with other indies. I think it's important that we all support each other in this.
Okay, well, thanks very much for your time, Rhee. And best luck with the company in the future.
No worries. Thank you for inviting me.
And we also talked to Paul Grogan from Gaming Rules. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Paul Grogan from Gaming Rules. How are you doing, Paul?
Doing okay. Just cleaned the fish tank out, and all of the house chores are done for today. The car's in the garage, so here we are. Let's have a chat.
Indeed. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what your channel is, just to give our listeners some context?
Yeah, so my name's Paul Grogan. I've been a gamer since the early 80s. I've been very, very passionate about everything to do with gaming, from role-playing games, collectible card games. Board games is predominantly my thing now, and for the last 10 years, I've worked full-time in the board game industry. So Gaming Rules is a YouTube channel where I create all sorts of different instructional videos, playthrough videos, and everything else. It's been going for more than 10 years because I started it while I still had the previous job. But then, just over 10 years ago now that I've been doing it full-time. I've also done lots of game development, game consultancy, rulebook writing, rulebook editing, but predominantly these days, it's mainly the YouTube channel.
And just for sort of complete clarity for our listeners, and because we're going to be talking about sort of trying to keep things as journalistically clear as possible, you and I have known each other for a few years.
Yes.
You've given me game demos and that kind of thing at cons, and we're friendly on the gaming scene, just so everyone's kind of aware of context. Unfortunately, we're not here to talk about nice things today. We're here to talk about a gentleman called Simon Lavender, who's been causing a bit of controversy at the moment. Can you tell us how you first met Simon, Paul, and what your initial impressions of him were?
It's actually many, many, many years ago. So you may remember UK Games Expo, I used to run the booth for Czech Games Edition.
I do, yep.
I don't even know how many years ago that was now. I think I stopped doing it about 3 or 4 years ago. But
pre-pandemic, definitely.
Yeah. But so it must have been, my first contact with him must have been 5-6 years ago, where I think it was after UK Games Expo, but there was some kind of contact where he was basically offering himself to join the demo staff.
The demo staff of CGE, not Games Expo in general.
Yeah, so the CGE demo booth that I ran, and I recruited all of the demo staff for it. I think he'd spoken to one of the demo staff there, and the demo staff had said, you need to speak to Paul, he's the person to speak to. And I think he contacted me afterwards. Now, this is going back quite a while. This is 5, 6, 7 years ago, whatever. My initial impression from that initial discussion was, this is a little odd, but we're fine. We were fine. We had enough demo team, we had enough demo staff, and we kind of recruited internally. So people who were friends of mine, people I knew, people who were good at teaching people how to play games, or friends of friends. We didn't really get anybody else in from the outside. So it was, thank you very much, but no thanks, we're okay. And that was it. So that was my first ever contact with him. And I do remember at the time, he was a little bit pushy with the conversation about saying, you know, how good of a demoer he was, how this, that, and the other. And I just kind of dismissed it and moved on.
Okay.
There's then a big gap. Well, there might be a big gap because the rest of it is all blurry. But
I mean, time has had some strange meaning in the last few years.
It has.
Yeah.
But then for a period of a few years, I would see Simon at various shows and, you know, he'd wave as you go past and I'd sort of wave and this, that, and the other. But we didn't really know each other. He knew me and I knew of him, but there was no real contact or anything like this. But there would be occasionally, out of the blue, every few months, just a random message would appear on Facebook Messenger.
Okay.
And if you've seen any of Simon's communications, it's not the clearest. And you can understand that when you're using like Messenger or short text or anything like that. It doesn't, you know, people use shorthand, but he would speak to me as if, I'm like his best friend. And he'd just reach out to me while I was in the middle of, you know, filming a video or doing something and start saying, oh, how's the weather near where you are? Or something unusual like that. And I'm like, and I'm always very polite.
Something very casual, conversational. Basically.
Yeah, or some. Again, I can't remember. This is years ago.
Sure,
but this is how it went for a number of years. Is that I just randomly get this message about something that didn't make any sense whatsoever, and I'm always polite. Every time anybody messages me, I very rarely ignore it. In fact, I never do. I always just go back and, you know, move on, and that's how it was. But it was always a little unusual, and it was always, as I say, he was speaking to me as if like we're friends with each other, and I was like, no, but, you know, we don't really know each other. I knew that he did something in the board game hobby, but I wasn't really fully aware of it. But then it was probably about just over a year ago, I think, where I got one of these random messages from him. And it was on a day where I was having a particularly bad day. I will admit I was particularly stressed. I can't remember what it was,
sure,
but I was, you know, stressed, on edge, whatever. And I got this message, and it was another random message that made no sense whatsoever. And I made a point, and I remember this well. And I went, I'm going to ignore this. And this is a big thing for me because I never do. I always reply politely to anybody who messages me. But I made a conscious decision, and I went, I'm going to just close that message and I'm going to try and focus and get on with my work. And it was a big thing for me to do, to say, somebody's messaged me with a, you know, semi-friendly, doesn't make much sense message, but I'm actually just going to close it and I'm not going to reply this time. And then about 10 or 15 minutes later, it pinged again. And basically what had happened is he'd been bragging on some Facebook group somewhere that he's friends with everybody and he knows everybody and everybody loves him and this, that, and the other. And somebody said, oh yeah, well, prove it. And he said, well, I'll send a message to Paul Grogan and I'll show you that he's going to reply to me. So at this point, something in me just went, hang on a minute, I'm busy, I'm working, I've got a job to do, and you're messaging me just to prove a point.
Yeah, so he's messaging you for kudos, not
so contact. So that he could then screenshot the message and post it on this Facebook group to prove to somebody. Now, it turns out the person who he was having this conversation with, I know. And they were messaging me saying, look, Paul, I'm really sorry, but I think I've got you involved in something. I know you're really busy, but are you getting any messages from Simon Lavender? And I said, yeah, and I'm not understanding what's going on. So it was all a bit confusing. And it was just basically really annoying. It was frustrating me. And I said, you know, I'm busy. It's really not appropriate to start sending me these messages just to prove this. And anyway, he wouldn't stop and he kept sort of going on and on and on. And in the end, I just sent an expletive message. And I don't do that. I very, very rarely swear. And
I've never known you to swear, Paul.
No. And again, that took quite a bit. He'd obviously pushed enough of my buttons that I just went, look, I've had enough of this. And I said something. And then the next thing, and then I can't remember if the conversation continued or something else, but it sort of went away. Then a few weeks later, I find out that there had been posts by Simon on at least more than one Facebook group with a screenshot of our private conversation, but it had been doctored, and I'm going to say Photoshop, other paint programs are available.
Yeah.
It had been doctored to cut out the information where I was basically saying, look, please stop bothering me, this, that, and the other. And it just looked like Simon had sent me a nice, polite message, and I told him to off. And I found out about this, a week and a half later. And I'm like, why didn't somebody tell me about this? This has been going around Facebook groups. Why didn't somebody tell me that? Thankfully, the admins of said groups had deleted it, because Simon's post was basically just that and nothing else. At which point I contacted him and started speaking to him and saying, I believe it's technically illegal to actually share private. I don't know if it is or not, but it's morally wrong. But to doctor it in such a way, I said, don't ever do that again. But that opened up a window where I was like, I've had enough of this, because over the last couple of years, myself and a number of other people in the industry have become aware of Simon's actions and what he does and the way he runs his channel. And a number of us have been disapproving of those, to say the least. But ultimately, I've considered him as, I'm going to use quotes here, mostly harmless, because he is somebody who constantly goes to events, speaks to publishers at their booth. Like, I'm going to use harassing and nagging them, because I've seen him doing it. I've been working at booths, and he's just there bombarding them with stats, bombarding them with information, trying to get review copies, always saying how he's got, 4 trillion impressions, and he's got more videos than anybody else, and he's done this, and he runs all of these. He basically exaggerates his own situation in order to get free copies of games. And it's at the point where it is laughable. He claims to do 2,500 in-person demos a year. He claims to run 365 gaming events every year.
Yeah, I saw that stat on it. I saw a stat. It's in his YouTube description.
Yeah. You've seen all of these stats. And I've seen more. The amount of stuff that he claims about himself, and some of it might be true, but he probably does have 2,600 videos on YouTube. He does. That is the truth. But there's so much of that. And not only does he continually bombard publishers at conventions with this information at their booth, he's always contacting them, emails and everything else.
I've seen a couple of email reach outs from him.
Yes. And a few of us in the industry have known that this is happening. Now, things like this get to me because they're wrong. Publishers should not be giving a person who gets 30 views on a video and no engagement. But if they want to do it, that's up to them. The publishers should be doing due diligence. They should not be, if any publisher is listening to this, and if somebody comes up to you at a convention and says, I'm such and such a reviewer, I do this, don't give them a copy of your game. Take their card, go away, look them up, and then decide afterwards, because reviewers, it's too easy, I think, to get review copies of games from publishers. I've been knowing that this has been going on, and I work in the industry. I know a lot of these publishers. I know for a fact that there are 3 publishers at least who have told me we gave him games to get him to go away, because he was just incessantly talking to us at the booth and just would not shut up and would not go away. So, whatever method is used, he does manage to get these free games. And we've known about this, as I say, me and a few other people. We've seen it happening. It's not right, but if publishers want to do it, that's up to them. However, that's not something which I'm going to start actively saying, I'm going to put a stop to this, because it's not important. It isn't hurting anybody apart from the publishers that are giving him free games. And in my opinion, that's down to them not doing due diligence. But then you see the other side of it. And I also know, because again, I work in the industry and people talk to each other in the industry, that Simon is also advertising paid services to these publishers. Hey, That's nothing wrong with that. I do the same. I have a, half of the work that I do in the industry is paid for. I have a sell sheet. I market myself. Publishers contact me. I give them a price list for the work. I'm not knocking that. That's how it is. But
one of the things Simon's been accused of is like offering free services and then sort of turning around and like saying it's basically paid in order to move yourself up the list in order to get your game to the sort of top of his review pile.
Yeah, which isn't clear from the start. But
yeah,
Simon does try to sell some of his services to people in the industry. Now, again, I don't want to seem to be knocking another content creator, but if you just go and watch a couple of Simon's videos, you will make a decision if you're a publisher about whether that is the kind of video that you would want advertising your games. I have seen, which I shouldn't have seen, but I have seen, because multiple people have sent it to me, Simon's prices for those videos that he does. It's so laughable that I can't believe anybody would ever pay that price. So again, we've got somebody who is blagging review copies of games, but that's down to the publishers not doing due diligence. And we've got somebody who's trying to sell, for a relatively large sum of money, these 2.5 minute how to set up, play and review videos, which are little more than an unboxing where he doesn't actually know what the game is. No publisher in their right mind is actually going to pay this, and therefore I just ignore it. He's going around trying to sell these services to publishers. I can't imagine any publisher that would ever be interested in anything like that. So I've kind of stepped back from it, and it's been one of those things that just goes on, and we just let it sort of go by the by and hope publishers stop giving him review copies of games. And then Gerardo happened. And suddenly everything started coming out of the woodwork. And I found out a lot more that I didn't know before, that just highlighted what kind of individual Simon is, both from a professional point of view, but also from a personal point of view as well. And you've seen a lot of the stuff on the Board Game Geek thread. You've seen other publishers come forward. You've seen other people who have dealt with Simon over the last X number of years and their interactions with him, and how morally questionable a number of those actions are, which there's no defense for.
For sort of small publishers listening to this, Paul, what would be your sort of top piece of advice when dealing with reviewers like myself, for instance, when they come to a convention? And you, yeah. We're both in that game. So what would be your advice to especially small publishers who are maybe just starting out, don't know the industry terribly well? What would be your sort of top piece of advice when dealing with a reviewer that comes up to your stand and says, give us a game?
Yeah, I mean, don't, is my first thing. I remember at Gen Con 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and I get really nervous. Asking for a review copy of the game, it makes me really nervous. It makes me uncomfortable. But there was one game that was coming out, and I really wanted to get it. And I went up, and I can't even remember who it was. And he went, "Are you here tomorrow?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Give me your card. I'll check you out tonight. Come back tomorrow." He then did that. He went away. He said, "Sorry, I didn't realize how big of how big your channel was or anything like that. Of course, you can have a review copy." And I went, "No, don't apologize. What you've done is what everybody should be doing."
Yeah, a little bit of checking.
A little bit of checking. Now, I know it's hard. You're at a convention, and I know it's hard, but you might be just giving away a copy of a game to somebody who isn't even a reviewer. Anybody can get a business card printed. Anybody can get anything printed. Just have a bit more due diligence and don't. Now, you might think, well, I'm a publisher. I've decided I'm going to give away 10 review copies. It doesn't matter as long as I've get rid of those 10 review copies. But it's wrong to give away review copies to somebody and not just people like Simon, but anybody. Jamie Stegmaier shared a story recently how somebody contacted Stonemaier Games asking for free review copies of games just because he was part of a gaming group that was like 8 or 9 people, and they felt that their gaming group was big enough to ask for review copies of games. And he's like, no, just don't do that. But the other thing is when anybody contacts you via any kind of messenger service, Facebook, Twitter, email, whatever, if you're a publisher, small, medium, large, or you're just a designer who's designing your games, don't believe what everybody says. You check them out. Google them. Look at their channel. Look at their videos. And as I say, I don't want to knock videos that Simon is creating, because at the end of the day, Simon is creating videos on board games on YouTube. I'm doing exactly the same thing. But if you're a publisher and you get an email from somebody and you go to their YouTube channel and you see all of these videos that have less than 50 views and no engagement, you've got to make a decision and think, okay, well, this guy, he's obviously enthusiastic. He's obviously producing tons of videos. But hang on a minute, none of them are getting any kind of traction or anything. Yeah, the guy is telling me, I'm doing all of this. I'm doing all of this. It's like, well, I don't think you are. And you've just got to be careful.
Thank you very much for your time, Paul. Really appreciate you coming on.
That's all right. Cheers, Ian.
Simon has put out a video for the game at the centre of this controversy on his channel. It's entitled How to Play and Review the Strange Forgeries of Mr. S.C. Rheber. It went live on the 4th of September. I've been communicating with Simon over Geek Mail, the Board Game Geek internal mail system. I chose not to conduct an audio interview as details were emerging all the time that I wanted to go back and forth to Simon on. We will have a link in our show notes to the screenshots of my full conversation with Simon, and I will make a full transcript available to make that conversation more accessible. I've also added screenshots that Simon shared with me of support he has been shown by various publishers. Some of those I have not been able to confirm, but we'll just come to that in a moment. Now, I'm going to do my best to highlight the salient points of the conversation and any information I feel is relevant to that info from the conversation I had with Simon. Again, the full transcript of this is going to be available to you. We're going to put that in a separate document outside the show notes, linked to from the show notes, because there's just quite a lot of it. Simon stated to me that Gerardo attached a returns label to an email that went to spam, and that is why Simon stopped replying. He missed those emails. In my conversation with Gerardo, he denies this happened. Simon himself says he blocked Gerardo in the original BGG thread. Simon has told me he played the game 4 times with different folk. According to Simon's BGG profile, those plays happened on the 1st of September. I asked Simon,
have you played the Strange Forgeries of Mr. S.C. Rheber, as you claim in the video you made?
Simon replies,
as stated in the video and the thumbnail, the rules are not finished, but as per Gerardo's instructions, I went off what was provided. The back of her box gives the key concept, just as the box of codenames does the same.
I followed that up with this question.
Given that you are unpacking the components of the Strange Forgeries in your video, and taking cards out of shrink wrap, it seems impossible that you have played that copy of the game. Did you have access to another copy of the game for your plays? If not, how did you play the game?
Simon replies,
as stated, I could only go off the back of the box. I wouldn't have made the video, and I would have waited for the rules, which is what we agreed, but then he went off script and unprofessionally, of the opinion not mine, posted what he did. Hence the video live when it was.
I've confirmed with Gerardo that there is no way currently to play this game digitally. The box is still in shrink wrap at the beginning of Simon's video. Simon's plays are recorded on BGG on the 1st of September, and as I said, the video went live on the 4th. Simon does not know anyone called Daniela, but has engaged third parties on his behalf to help resolve the situation. This has included a conversation with Citizen Advice, but as best we can tell, that organisation does not provide mediation services, though they may provide pointers towards others who do. Simon says he was the target of a cyber attack and his car was damaged because of the accusations of the thread on BGG. He has informed police of both incidents. He denies the accusations from Paul Grogan regarding the doctored conversation that Paul mentioned in our interview. And he is disappointed that friends in the industry that support him did not do so publicly, but says that they thought it would not change people's minds at this stage. Simon has shared some messages of support from folk with us. I've been given enough information to confirm 2 of those. One is Dan Chard of Carcassonne Central. Dan writes,
hi Simon, it's Dan Chard here of Carcassonne Central. We've met a few times in the past. Hope all is well with you. I wanted to reach out because I've seen some of the stuff that's kicked off about you and Amass Games on BGG recently, and I wanted to offer to help if possible. As an outsider looking in, I can't pretend to know any of the ins and outs of it all, and I've only heard it from one side. But from my personal dealings with you, I know you're a great guy, and I know how hard you've always worked on your brand. So it seems such a shame to let it be tarnished over this small thing.
Dan goes on to offer to help sort out the return of the prototype. There's also one from Jeppe Norska. He's a game designer of an escape room series called 50 Clues, and his imprint's called Norska Games. He simply types,
"Stay strong."
I contacted Dan and Jeppe to confirm those messages. I have seen others that Simon shared in screenshots with me, but I've been unable to verify their identities. I'll put all of that in our screenshots doc. They'll be linked to the show notes. The original thread has now been locked, but you can still read it for yourselves. We're putting as much information in the show notes as we can without overwhelming you. As we've mentioned, there are a large number of screenshots as well. Those will be in a separate document linked to in the show notes. Thanks to everyone who's spoken to us for the story, both publicly and privately. We've had some people reach out to us who wanted to remain anonymous as well. We just haven't been able to include everything that we've been told because it's such a big story. Now, normally we would take this moment to provide our own opinions on a new subject like this, but we want people to make up their own minds with the evidence provided. We've tried as best as possible to present as much information to you as we can to come to your own conclusions. Whatever that conclusion is, let us say this. As some of the folks said in our interviews, please do your research into who you're dealing with when it comes to any professional relationship in the tabletop industry. By that, I don't just mean Googling folk, as that will not throw up what you need. You need to go and talk to people. Approach other publishers. They are often very happy to help and advise. Sites like Cardboard Edison, for instance, are full of links to helpful advice and organizations that can help you. As Ree said, the UK scene at least is full of folk ready to help you so you can avoid any pitfalls along the road to publication. And that includes you approaching publishers, not just influencers and that kind of thing. Any professional relationship is what we're talking about here. If any influencer just asks you for review copies, including me, make sure that they are the right fit for you and your product and that you fully understand the deal you're making.
Now on to the rest of the news. Paul Sawyer, co-founder of historical wargames publisher Warlord Games and former editor of White Dwarf, the magazine published by Games Workshop, has posted the devastating news on his Facebook page on the 30th of August that he was diagnosed with stage 4 glioblastoma, which is an aggressive form of brain cancer. Sawyer said he's expected to live another 12 months and is still awaiting the results of another brain scan. We will now read out his post in full.
It's time I share what's been happening with me and my family these last few months. I fell ill during setup at the Big Salute show in London earlier this year and been pretty much out of action since then. This has led to me having to step out of my role as warlord to concentrate 100% on my health. Ever since falling ill, I've tried to keep a low profile whilst coming to terms. This is partly down to going from working all hours to not being able to work at all, but also the ever-changing way my health has been on a daily basis from day one after I left hospital in London. It's been a fun, in air quotes, time. At first, the medics had thought I had suffered a stroke during Salute setup, but after the first rounds of tests, that was discounted. Following weeks of hospital stays and tests, I was diagnosed with stage 4 glioblastoma, one of the most aggressive and deadly forms of brain cancer. I've received treatment in an attempt to shrink the tumour, but I face the harsh reality that I will not beat this cancer, and the truth is I have around 12 months left to live before the tumour has its way with my puny brain. I will know the results of the all-important brain scan I had this week in a couple of weeks. Working alongside many of you and gaming with more has been an absolute pleasure. I wish I could turn back time and do more of the gaming and less of the working, so I pass the same message on to each of you. Make the most of your time while you have it. I know that in time I will leave with a heart full of gratitude and a wealth of fond memories. I wish you all nothing but the best, and please rest assured that I shall be spending my remaining months surrounded by the love of my beautiful family, whilst looking forward to becoming a granddad for the first time in December, once again outnumbered by yet another little girl, but one who I absolutely cannot wait to meet. Whilst I write this with a proud yet sorrowful heart, I know I will still see many of you in my remaining months, be they in person, over video call, or in a game or two. Onwards and upwards. Cheers, Paul.
Warlord Games put out a special commemorative miniature called Sergeant Sawyer on their website to raise money for the Brain Tumour Charity, a cause chosen by Paul himself. And there's also a GoFundMe running for him. We'll put links to both in our show notes. The whole Brainwaves team, our thoughts are with Sawyer and his family doing this very difficult.
Hello everyone, this is Ian from the editing suite. I'd just like to add a little addendum to our last story regarding Paul Sawyer. We learned earlier today that there has been a fake Facebook account going around under the name of John Stallard. John Stallard is one of the co-founders of Warlord Games. This account has been messaging people directly and asking for financial support for Paul Sawyer. Please be aware that this is not associated with Warlord Games, so do not send money if this account contacts you. Thanks very much. Hex & Co is a network of board game cafes with 3 locations in New York, and workers at the cafes have been heavily involved in workplace unionization, which we have covered previously. As reported by Rascal News, workers at all 3 of Hex & Co's locations staged a walkout on Saturday the 31st of August, the beginning of the Labor Day weekend in the United States. This was in response to the management's alleged union-busting activities. A press release from Tabletop Workers United said,
"Ownership has consistently retaliated against workers for exercising their rights, including implementing unilateral policy changes that led to increased write-ups and discipline, as well as bullying workers during negotiations."
Hex & Co management did not immediately respond to a request for comment from Rascal. As we reported in episode 145 of the cast, on the 5th of June 2024, Tabletop Workers United, a branch of Workers United New York, New Jersey, began negotiations regarding contracts with the owners of the 5 biggest board game cafes, including Hex & Co. The negotiation process with joint owners John Freeman and Gregory May had proven to be difficult, mostly because Freeman and May's legal representative, Andrew Hoffman, had been largely antagonistic to the union's efforts and had been taking extended gaps between in-person negotiation sessions to spend the summer at his beach house. In collaboration with Workers United New York, New Jersey, Tabletop Workers United has submitted 9 unfair labour practice charges with the National Labour Relations Board, which include 17 allegations of threats, interrogation, discriminatory enforcement of work rules, and retaliation. According to Rascal News, the charges that spurred the walkout spanned from November 8, 2023 to Jan 24, 2024, and describe the alleged anti-union efforts on behalf of management. Just more awful behaviour from this management behind these board game cafes. Just give people a little bit of what they want and they'll be happier and work for you better. It's just not a very hard... I mean, basically every study says this, right? Just
No, but you've been listening to the wrong studies. I will get you someone who will tell you the right thing.
Yeah, the right study.
The right study.
Indeed.
Anyway, yes, join a union if you can.
Indeed, join a union if you can. Let's move on to some news from our Lords Asmodee.
On Monday the 2nd of September, Asmodee, the owner of 21 tabletop game studios, announced the appointment of Thomas Kogler as its new Chief Executive Officer, succeeding Stephanie Carville, who has held the post since 2012. Kogler, who has held various positions within Asmodee over the last 9 years, is changing roles to become a board member and senior advisor at Asmodee. He is also joining Embracer Group's executive management team. Embracer Group is the Swedish conglomerate company that owns Asmodee. Lars Wingefors, co-founder and CEO of Embracer Group, says of the appointment,
Thomas's appointment as CEO of Asmodee and as a member of Embracer's executive management team is a recognition of his successful journey within the industry and Asmodee. He is a unique leader who brings together Asmodee's legacy as a long-time member of the company's executive committee with a fresh generational imprint on its future direction. I'm confident that Thomas will be the right leader to guide the company through its next phase with a strong focus on profitable growth.
Kogler is looking forward to his new role and had this to say about the appointment.
Asmodee is home to incredibly talented people and fantastic brands with tremendous growth potential for the future within tabletop games and into other forms of entertainment. I'm honoured and humbled to step into the position of CEO and to carry on Asmodee's legacy into its next era, bringing incredible play experiences into every home and celebrating tabletop gaming as a major form of entertainment.
Well, simultaneously, Asmodee seems to be very much remaining a part of Embracer, but also trying to still be its own thing.
Yeah, I mean, their plan is to spin it off slightly, but still not remain as a part. After all, we reported earlier in the year that Asmodee's been saddled with quite a lot of Embracer's debt, but the company still remains part of Embracer for sure, because Embracer still reports the profits as part of that company. I doubt that this will mean any big changes immediately. It's CEOs moving around. We'll see more as Asmodee sort of splits off more from Embracer, I guess, and we'll see what that brings.
From one big company to another, from Asmodee to Hasbro. Ian.
Despite numerous AI art controversies involving Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons & Dragons, it seems the CEO of parent company Hasbro thinks AI is an inevitable part of the D&D future. Speaking at a recent Goldman Sachs event, CEO Chris Cox said this.
Inside of development, we've already been using AI. It's mostly machine learning-based AI or proprietary AI as opposed to a ChatGPT approach. We will deploy it significantly and liberally internally as both a knowledge worker aid and as a development aid. I'm probably more excited, though, about the playful elements of AI. If you look at a typical D&D player, I play with probably 30 or 40 people regularly, there's not a single person who doesn't use AI somehow for either campaign development or character development or story ideas. That's a clear signal that we need to be embracing it. We need to do it carefully. We need to do it responsibly. We need to make sure we pay creators for their work. And we need to make sure we're clear when something is AI generated. But the themes around using AI to enable user-generated content, using AI to streamline new player introduction, using AI for emergent storytelling, I think you're going to see that not just our hardcore brands like D&D, but also multiple of our brands.
A statement about AI on the Hasbro site implies that Hasbro may use AI for other brands in their portfolio as well. I mean, the bubblings about AI and Dungeons & Dragons have been around for a little while now. My prediction is that Hasbro are at some point going to say AI GMs. Welcome to AI GMs, because it's one of the bottlenecks for any role-playing game. There's more players than there are GMs, always.
Yes.
That's my prediction.
There's not a single person who doesn't use AI somehow for either campaign development or character development or story ideas. Huh?
Yeah. I will admit that I have used AI to generate little character portfolios once or twice. And then I stopped because I kind of got the ick about it. But I have done that.
Fine.
But not to sell or anything, just for my own games at home.
I play with probably 30 or 40 people regularly.
That's a lot of people you play with.
That's a lot of people.
Is that the Hasbro D&D playtest group and you have told them to like AI?
Is that one big group?
I hope not.
It cannot be.
Oh, I get the jitters managing 5 or 6 people around the table, let alone 30 or 40.
Yeah, if I've ever.
Anyway, yeah, it sounds like AI is here to stay in the minds of Chris Cox anyway, and we'll see what that brings to D&D in the future.
Yeah, but you know what also stays in the mind of Chris Cox? The fact that he fired 1,900 people last year to preserve the big lie of exponential growth. Anyway.
From one big company to still a big company? But a slightly smaller company.
As reported by Board Game Wire on the 4th of September, CMON, cool mini or not, a board game publisher known for its miniature-heavy games such as Ankh, Blood Rage, Rising Sun or Zombicide, published its financial data. The company's revenue dropped 24.9% from $21.1 million in the first half of last year to $15.9 million in the same period this year. The drop in revenue also affected Cool Mini or Not's after-tax profit, which fell more than 39% from almost $287,000 to $174,000 this year. Now, crowdfunding campaigns are making up more and more of CMON's revenue. As a percentage, the company's crowdfunding campaign revenue makes up 62.6% of its overall revenue for the first half of 2024, which is up from 40% for the first half of 2021. However, revenue from the company's crowdfunding campaigns also fell over the same period. It dropped 9.7% from around $11 million to just over $9.9 million.
Some interesting stats there from CMON. I mean, basically, they're drifting more towards crowdfunding, but it's bringing them in less money overall at the same time. So they're going to have to hit that crowdfunding button harder, I guess. The crowdfunding space becoming increasingly competitive. There's more platforms out there. You've got GameFound and BackerKit now taking a piece of the Kickstarter pie. Did CMON not go exclusively to BackerKit or GameFound? Am I misremembering that?
I honestly can't remember.
Yeah, me neither.
I don't want to impugn their honor. Going, yes, they've gone straight to GameFound or something like that. But
that crowdfunding space becoming increasingly people expect more shine, more polish. Will CMON be able to deliver that? Who knows?
Well, any company.
Indeed.
Now, from a slightly big company to another slightly big company, Restoration Games.
Restoration Games, a publisher that re-releases old games with some tweaks and improvements, such as Return to Dark Tower, Thunder Road Vendetta, or Unmatched, announced on the 9th of September that they have grown their team by 2 people. Beth Erickson, who has many years of experience in the industry and was previously worked for ZMan Games and Pegasus Spiel, joins as lead marketing alchemist, working alongside Suzanne Sheldon to increase interest and awareness of the company's product line. Paul Marchbanks takes on the role of warehouse warlock, overseeing inventory management, warehousing, and similar duties at the company. He previously worked at Quartermaster Logistics, where he helped creators manage their crowdfunding fulfillment. Restoration Games owner Justin D. Jacobson said the following about the appointments.
We have a lot of amazing projects coming up, including some big crowdfunded projects and major licenses. We wanted to make sure we had the people in place to continue our commitment to quality and excellence. We pride ourselves on never having anyone we've hired decide to leave the team. That comes from our positive culture, focus on quality of life, and going the extra mile to bring in the right people. But I'm going to say this. I really
big shackles.
I mean, if you have an issue with that, if you're listening to Restoration Games, please forward all complaints to Ian McAllister. His do not necessarily reflect the rights and opinions of the Giant Brain and Brainwaves. But I would really like them to actually wear a little name tag with lead marketing alchemist and warehouse warlock. If they don't,
I mean, if you don't, I'd definitely quit if I did not get a name badge that said warehouse warlock on it.
Well, that's why
and a hat, preferably.
Well, listen. That's why you've not been asked to work at Restoration Games, because you'd leave.
Yeah, I would leave without the name badge that said warehouse warlock and the hat. Yeah. Congratulations to both those folks. The Restoration Games is a company that continues to make waves in the industry, and I'm sure we're going to see more of them over the next couple of years. Now, let's go to a story a little close to home, Jamie.
Yes, over the weekend of the 7th and 8th of September, the Giant Brain team were hosting panels and running quizzes at Tabletop Scotland. The convention had moved to the Royal Highland Centre just outside of Edinburgh, a big step up into a venue 3 times the size of the previous Dewars Centre in Perth. The convention was in the Highland Hall on the showgrounds, which I believe is the biggest hall. Now, Tabletop Scotland has released the figures for this year, and it's quite a jump up. In 2023, they had 2,233 unique and 3,873 turnstile visitors. The turnstile number counts people multiple times if they came back over the 3 days of the convention. This year, they had 3,920 uniques, which is 175% of last year's, and 6,468 turnstile, 167% of last year's.
Looks like the move worked.
Yes.
Yep.
Did you enjoy it, Ian?
I did. I had a very good time. I'll be putting out some interviews with folk from the show floor. The seminars I hosted should go out in the next month or so as well. And I have not quite had a chance to write up my convention report, but that will be coming hopefully this week. Maybe by the weekend should have gotten that out. Yeah, we had a really good time. We saw lots of folk we knew, caught up with people. I even played some games, though Jamie played more than me.
I managed to get 15 games played over the weekend.
That's pretty good going.
And I got to say, that is a lot. I think that's probably played more games over that weekend than I have this year. Just because anyway, yeah, I played 15 games. It was great.
Yeah, it was a really good convention. From our conversation with David, who's the organizer, David Wright, it seems to have gone well for them and the exhibitors, and they're already planning for next year. And
if you are following them on, say, Facebook or another social media, they have recently put out a survey. If you did attend Tabletop Scotland 2024, see if you can fill out that survey, because every year they want to make things better and better.
Indeed. Now let's move on to some jobs, opportunities, and events. First of all, we'd just like to remind everybody that the Tabletop Jobs Facebook group exists. It's full of jobs across the world, so do go and check that out if you're looking for a position in the tabletop games industry.
Submissions for the 2024 Traditional Deck Game Design Contest on Board Game Geek are now open until the 1st of December. The contest started in 2021 and encourages the creation of games accessible to anyone who has one or more decks of traditional playing cards. Prizes include Geek Gold, which is a currency used on Board Game Geek, and entrants will have to provide feedback to designers of other games taking part in the contest. The winners in all categories will be determined by Google form voting, which will start on the 15th of December. So you can find more information about the contest, including the entry requirements, on the Board Game Geek page, a link to which is in our show notes.
Also on Board Game Geek is the inaugural 2024 Roll and Write Game Design Contest, which is now open and runs until the 14th of November 2024. It is an opportunity for game designers to showcase their creativity and skill in crafting engaging and innovative roll and write games. It welcomes seasoned designers or those just starting out. The contest is sponsored by a number of well-known publishers, including Rolling Rhino Games, Postmark Games, Dice Pen, Keepers of Fun, and Radek Ignato, and the list of sponsors is likely to grow. Sponsors are offering free roll and write games as prizes, in addition to the Geek Gold awarded in each category. To find out more about how to enter, please check out the link in our show notes.
The Game Crafter, a web-to-print game publishing company, announced their latest board game design challenge. The task is to design a game that fits into a standard VHS case. For those of you not old enough to know what a VHS is, let me explain a bit further. VHS stands for Video Home System and is a format where video and audio were recorded on magnetic tape, housed in a plastic cassette that could be played via a VHS player connected to a television. It works very much like the audio cassettes that you could play on your home hi-fi system or portable Walkman. And if you're not old enough to know what a portable Walkman is,
Google it.
Yeah. Anyway, the Game Crafter is offering VHS cases as a box option, and it is your task, if you choose to accept it, to design a game that fits comfortably inside this size box. The contest is now open and runs until the 3rd of December. If you're interested, have a look on the Game Crafter website. Of course, we've put the link in the show notes.
And we'd just like to take a moment to give a shout out to our patrons, especially our executive producers, Kevin Bertram from Fort Circle Games, James Naylor from Naylor Games, and Sean Newman from the Gamelot team. Thank you so much to everyone who continues to support the cast, whether that's just sharing it about or financially. We've just paid some of the hosting fees for the cast and site, and we could not do that without you. So thank you very, very much. You can join them from just $1 a month if you like the kind of reporting we do. We'd really appreciate you chucking us a buck or two to help us do more of that kind of thing. There's various other ways to support us on the site, and we'll put a link to all that in our show notes. And as is tradition, we've got some Monopoly news.
Yes. I mean, we got most of the Monopoly news we got done at the quiz. If anyone wasn't there and is interested, we gave a round, I'm happy to do this, where we gave 10 versions of Monopoly, not intellectual property versions, 10 versions of Monopoly. It sounds stupid, but things like the longest game ever, Monopoly as a Jenga or with a cash gun. And we told our quiz entrants which of these are real and which of these are fake. Turns out all 10 of them were real. That includes Monopoly Shuffleboard, which we covered on this podcast, and Monopoly Jenga. Don't know if we covered it. But that's not important right now. What if I told you, apparently, there are only 11 locations in Scotland that have Monopoly versions?
Shocked and appalled.
Thank you, yeah. Shocked and appalled. World of Monopoly, the website that is your one-stop shop for everything Monopoly, has created a map of local versions of Monopoly. Importantly, these are local versions only, and no national versions by Hasbro are included. So the companies that are recorded include Winning Moves, Identity Games, USAopoly, as some of the examples cited by the website. Now, at the time of recording, there are 1,020 versions recorded all over the world. If you, dear listener, are aware of any others, please contact them to update the map, as they want to get it as complete as possible. And if you're interested, the locations in Scotland that are noted are Aberdeen, 3 versions, Arran, Ayr, Dundee, Edinburgh, 2 versions, Glasgow, 4 versions, the Highlands and Islands, Islay, Perth, Stirling, and 2 versions for Scotland as a whole.
Well, there you go.
There you go. And none of those are Hasbro's original.
Indeed. Well, thanks very much for listening, everyone. We know this was a longer than normal cast, but we really appreciate you bearing with us. Sometimes stories come to us that we feel are worth digging into and covering in a much larger way, and this was just one of them. If you like what you've listened to, then the best way to help us out is to share the podcast and drop us a review and rating on iTunes. You can also follow Oliver on the Tabletop Games blog. He'll hopefully be back with us for the next cast. We have our Discord, and we'll put an invite to that in the show notes. Please do come along there and chat about your favorite games, take part in our news discussions, all that. You can find me on Blue Sky and Oliver as well. I'm giantbrain.co.uk, and Oliver is just Tabletop Games blog. You can search for both of those. Our Instagram is giantbrainuk, Facebook Giant Brain. Our website is giantbrain.co.uk, where you can find the archive of the Brainwaves podcast alongside all my articles. And if you'd like to email us about any story you'd like us to cover, or any comments you have on anything we've covered in this cast or previous casts, our email is giantbrainuk@gmail.com. If you'd like to talk to us anonymously, we guarantee your anonymity. Thanks very much for listening, folks, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.